Welcome to lecture 18, where we'll be taking a look at three little known countries, but countries that your social studies teachers will be talking about. That is Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. Let's start off by looking at a map of the Middle East. We'll do just a little review on it. Okay, there's the Middle East, and we know this one right up here. This is Iran. Okay, capital is Tehran. So Tehran, Iran. Okay, this is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's capital is Riyadh. And I usually teach this by talking about Saudi Arabia and saying, hey, they are really odd there, okay? They wear funny clothes. They don't let women drive, or at least they didn't used to. They're just really odd people, really odd. Sounds like Riyadh, okay? Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, if that helps you, great. Okay, so we have Iran over here. We have Saudi Arabia right here. Up here we have Iraq. Okay? Iraq is one of those places that we have the little Cold War being acted out between Iran and Saudi Arabia. We've had lots of Americans involved here over the years. And the capital of Iraq is Baghdad. Baghdad, Iraq. Okay? And this little country right here is Kuwait. Okay? So we have Iran, capital Tehran. We have Saudi Arabia, capital Riyadh. We have Iraq, the capital Baghdad, and we have little Kuwait down here. I don't think Kuwait's on the list, but it's an easy capital to remember. It's Kuwait City. Okay? Over here we have Israel, little tiny country, and even smaller, we have the West Bank right next to it, right there, and the Gaza Strip. Okay. Here we have Jordan. Here we have Syria. Syria, of course, in the middle of a big civil war. Here's Lebanon. This is the one that its capital Beirut got about half level from that giant explosion we talked about. Last lecture, we talked about Turkey up here. We talked about Cyprus right here. Okay? So Cyprus. You've got all of that in your notes. Today, we're going to take a look at these three countries right up here. We have Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. We probably should take a look at the water too. This is the Black Sea. Okay, Black Sea, make a B. Should use my mouse, it's a lot easier. Over here we have the Caspian Sea. Here we have the Med. Here we have the Red Sea. And that dangerous place, we have the Persian Gulf. All right. So we're going to focus on these three right up here. Okay. Let's see, can I focus in a little bit? There we go. Okay, this one up here is Georgia. Yes, it is spelled exactly the same as the state in the United States. Has absolutely no connection between the two. Okay, this is Georgia. This is Azerbaijan. And this is little Armenia right down here. Okay, Armenia. Remember, over here we have Turkey, and here we have Iran. Okay. All right, let me pull up some notes on this. so you can see them while I talk about these countries. All right, all three of these countries got a lot of similarities. They were all independent countries at one time, but as the USSR, that is the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, expanded, it kind of sucked them in. USSR, however, did not last very long. Now, these were the communists. This is the people that we were resisting during the Cold War that your parents and grandparents lived through. But when the USSR collapsed in 1991, all of these countries became free, okay? Along with a whole bunch of other countries, because this Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was made up of a whole bunch of different countries that had been brought into this Soviet sphere. But when Soviet Union fell apart, all of them became free. And this leads to some problems, which we'll discuss here in just a minute. All of these countries are democracies, but other than that, they are really, really different. Let's take a look at Georgia first. You can see the population there, mostly a Christian country, is considered a developing country. Now, you have established countries, you have developing countries, you have poor countries. Developing, it's not in the top tier of economics, but it is getting better. It is making progress. So how do you measure that? You measure that with GDP. GDP stands for Gross Domestic Product. The gross domestic product is everything your country produces, goods and services. Okay? So if you are producing lots and lots of stuff like the United States, you have a very high gross domestic product. But there is another term that you need to be aware of, and this is a better measure of how well a country is doing, is the per capita gross domestic product. That is, you take the gross domestic product, everything that country produces, and divide it by the population. And that gives you the per capita gross domestic product. And sometimes here, gross domestic product per capita. They make $4,300 per year per person, okay? So they are only the 112th highest GDP in the world and only the 109th highest with the per capita GDP. With like 194 countries in the world, yeah, they're not in the top. So where's all this income coming from? Well, you can see mining, tourism, agriculture, and hydropower. Yes, there are countries that actually sell their electricity or use their hydropower and sell coal they otherwise would have burned or something like that. This is a country that has had some problems with its neighbor to the north, Russia. Okay, and you remember it's plugged right up against Russia. Now, during the era of the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the Russians were basically running this union. They are the biggest population. This is where the power was centered. And they were always concerned about these other countries that they have absorbed into the USSR. How can we make them one of us? They were very aware of this. Stalin, when he first comes up with the USSR, actually keeps a guy named Nikita Khrushchev around, who later becomes one of the leader of the Soviet Union, because he was a Georgian. He wanted to send a message to all of these little enclaves saying, hey, we are not an empire that has conquered you. Look, we actually have a Georgian as one of the leaders of the country. But another way you do this is you send your population, Russians, into these other places. The thinking was, if we send in Russians, they'll get to know the local people and they'll become good friends and everything will be rainbows and puppies and wonderfulness. Didn't exactly work out that way, because how are you going to get a Russian to go to one of these other little countries? What you do is you make them promises. You give them a good job there. This is a big attraction. Okay? Get a job. They may give you promise you a good apartment when you get there. And so some Russians would jump at this. Yeah, a chance to better my life. And so they moved to places like Georgia, like Belarus, like Ukraine, all of these countries that were part of the Soviet Union. They move in, but instead of being welcomed and accepted and all of this stuff, they often were resented. Hey, these Russians would show up speaking Russian, not Armenian, not Latvian or Ukrainian. They show up speaking their language. They are always more concerned with what's going on back in Russia than what's going on in this country that they have moved into. And they got that good job. Remember, they had to get that good job or they wouldn't come. But hey, Georgians are looking around and say, you know, my cousin could have done that job. Why is it given to this Russian? They look at that nice apartment the Russians are getting. Yeah, how come we're not getting these nice apartments? So rather than really cementing the relationship between the satellite republics, the Soviet republics, with Mother Russia, they actually kind of caused a little tension there. Well, the Soviet Union falls apart. What about those Russians now that are living in Georgia? They're not getting the extra help that they used to get. They're getting paid like everybody else now. They have been there for a long time and just can't pick up and move back to Russia and give up your house and give up your apartment or give up your job because things are really grim economically in Russia after the collapse of the USSR. So they usually stay, but that resentment towards them is still there. But they're always thinking, yeah, wish we were part of Russia, wish we were part of Russia. And in several cases, they have either tried to become part of Russia or become their own country, basically allied with Russia very closely. And that's what happens in Georgia. You have a Russian-leaning population in two little provinces right up on the border with Russia, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. These have got a large Russian population, and they are not happy with being part of Georgia. They are feeling picked upon, persecuted, discriminated. And yeah, there was some of that went on. There's some of that goes on in other places like Ukraine, like the Baltic states. We'll talk about those when we get to them. But they are wanting to break away. And through a series of missteps and calculations, they do actually break away from Georgia. Well, Georgia's not going to put up with that. And so they mobilize their army and they go pushing in. And the Russians say, oh, hey, there are our fellow Russians being persecuted in Georgia. We got to go help them. It also works to the leadership's advantage if they can show the Russian people, yeah, we are going to stand up for our Russian people, even the ones that aren't in Russia. And besides, nothing like a good war to get people excited and supporting the government. So the Russians support Abkhazia and South Ossetia with troops. And yeah, what's Georgia going to do against Russia? Yeah, little tiny Georgia, what, 3.7 million population against Russia with like 150 million population. You pretty well know which way this war is going to go unless the United States gets involved. And this is what Georgia was counting on. Their president figures, yep, the Americans are going to come to our aid. They are going to fight against this Russian aggression. And he's just waiting for American planes to come flying in, American tanks to come driving in. And I don't know what was he thinking, because it's not going to happen. America is not going to go to war with Russia. Remember, Russia's got nukes. We got nukes. We're not going to war with Russia over a country of Georgia, which most Americans had no idea what it was, and certainly not over these two little provinces Americans have never heard of. And so basically the Russians have their way, and they don't take over these countries or these little provinces. They become their own little countries, except they're really part of Russia. Okay, so that's what went on with that in Georgia. The Georgians obviously do not like Russia. There is now lots of unhappiness there. All right, let's scroll down and take a look at, where's my scroll bar? That's not what I want. There's my scroll bar. Let's scroll down to Azerbaijan. Okay, Azerbaijan, you remember, right on the Caspian Sea. Well, what's in the Caspian Sea? Well, we know caviar. We've already talked about that if you were watching the lectures. But also in there is a whole bunch of oil. And Azerbaijan is pumping oil like crazy. The country's doing very well. There's about 10 million of them. Again, a democracy, mostly Muslim. However, they do not mix their religion with their politics. Politics are secular. It's like here in the United States. Religion doesn't figure in too much. And with all that oil, their economy is doing very well. But it's not just their economy. They actually have got a real good agricultural base going. But it's mostly oil. So you would expect that gross domestic product per capita to be much higher, and it is, in fact, much higher. Okay, so we've got like $18,700 average per capita per person in Azerbaijan. Remember, it was like 4,300 in Georgia. However, they do have their problems too, and their problem is with Armenia. There is a section of Azerbaijan that is known as the Nagorno-Karabakh. Nagorno-Karabakh. It's full of Armenians, and yet it is in territory claimed by Azerbaijan. Well, the Armenians want to be part of Armenia, and there have been really bad feelings about this, including some shooting going on. So there is lots of unhappiness between Azerbaijan, who is doing very well for themselves, and Armenia, their neighbor just to the west. Okay, well, let's take a look at Armenia. Where is my darn scroll bar? There it is. Okay, Armenia, not a very populous country, not a very big country, about 3 million, and yet there are 8 million Armenians that speak the language, that feel the culture, that are living outside its border, including a huge number that live in Los Angeles, here in the United States. Again, democracy. This one is mostly Christian, which is kind of interesting because it is sandwiched right between Muslim Turkey and Muslim Azerbaijan. And to the south, we have Muslim Iran. And yet this is a Christian country, 98% Christian country. It's an interesting place. Their economy is doing just fine too. They have very good agriculture. They've got a whole bunch of volcanic soil. It's just incredibly productive. But they've also got mining and manufacturing. They have power thanks to nuclear reactors built by the Russians back when Armenia was part of the USSR. Now, you're suspicious of these because the Russians had trouble with their reactors before, but that's where most of their electricity comes from. They do have coal, but you got nukes. Let's use the nukes there. Now, what are you going to do here when you're surrounded by people that do not like you? Okay, to the west, we have Turkey. For reasons I'll explain here in just a minute. Turks and the Armenians do not get along. In fact, you cannot cross their border. It is a closed border. To the west, they have Azerbaijan. We just talked about the difficulties they have with Azerbaijan. That is a closed border. What do you do with this? Well, you have a very powerful friend. They are very good friends with the Russians. Ooh, what about Georgia to the north? Well, Georgia and Russia just had a war, and they're not really happy with each other. So therefore, Georgia is not really happy with Armenia, who is really good friends with Russia. You know, it is a good thing that Iran is to the south. Despite the religious differences, Armenia and Iran get along famously. They're good buddies. Okay, what is the key? Is being good friends with Russia. The Russians actually have troops in Armenia. Georgia's not going to mess with Armenia. Turkey's not going to mess with Armenia. Azerbaijan's not going to mess with Armenia, because if you do, you're messing with Russian troops. And Georgia learned their lesson about messing with Russian troops. Okay, so yeah, kind of a tough neighborhood for Armenia. So what's going on with Turkey? They are incredibly bitter, the Armenians are, towards Turkey. They have long memories in the Middle East, and they think back to the World War I Armenian genocide. Anyway, World War I, wasn't that 100 years ago? Yeah, but the genocide was ugly. Used to be Armenia was under the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire centered in Turkey. You have Turkey that is Muslim. You have Armenia, which is Christian. The Armenians were suspected of not really supporting Germany and Turkey during World War I. In fact, there were rumors that they were going to come out against Turkey in this war. Now, it's not like they could do much, little tiny Armenia, but the Turks went in and killed massive amounts of Armenians. About 1.5 million is the number that most historians use. It was ugly. Yes, bullets and clubs were involved, but they had a particular tactic that was very effective. They would surround a town. They would go in, order everybody out of their houses, and march them out into the desert. You would march them 3 or 4 days out into the desert. You give them no food, you give them no water, and then the Turks would jump in their trucks and drive away. So here you have this massive amount of Armenians with no food, no water, haven't eaten or drunk for 3 or 4 days, and they're 3 or 4 days from water or food. They die. It was really an ugly, ugly thing. Now, the Turks totally deny this. They said, no, didn't happen, and refused to take any blame for this. It's pretty well established by historians that sometimes historians are hysterical, by historians, that this did actually happen. But Turkey's refusal to admit it, Armenians' unwillingness to forgive it, it's not a happy situation there. Okay? So there you have Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. Let's take a quick look at the map one more time before we turn you loose. Okay, so we have Georgia right up here. We have Azerbaijan right here. Put an AZ to distinguish it from Armenia. And we have Armenia right here. Okay. All right, be sure you email me any questions that you may have. Keep working on your assignments, get those things in, be studying these countries. And tomorrow, what are we doing tomorrow? Oh, Yemen, Oman, and the United Arab Emirates. Okay, hey, have a great day.